Madridistas, what's going on? Let me see how many of you guys are here. I can see a lot of you have been waiting for us to go live here. Hopefully the audio's coming in fine. All right, guys. So obvious meltdown. We knew inevitably under Carlo Ancelotti, with the lack of tactics, with the lack of strategy, that he was going to get outcoached. I'm looking forward to hearing from my good friend Michael Feeney over here on his take, because from my perspective, as a guy who's been a fan of Real Madrid for many years, first of all, let me just start by saying, I've been saying that Carlo Ancelotti is not the man for Real Madrid. Long term, Carlo Ancelotti came during a period where Real Madrid was going through a transition. The year that we won the Champions League, Karim Benzema obviously ends up winning the Ballon d'Or. That was a spectacular season for Real Madrid. We obviously exceeded expectations. Nobody expected Carlo Ancelotti to come to Real Madrid from Everton and do what he did. And he helped transition the squad. He turned Vinny into a truly an elite forward. And we're grateful for those memories. We're grateful for what Carlo Ancelotti has done for this football club. He's not a bad person. As a Real Madrid fan, I don't hate Carlo Ancelotti. I will always look at him as somebody who brought a lot of success to our football club. But tonight, it wasn't a matter of Real Madrid, losing to Arsenal. Today, Carlo Ancelotti was outcoached by Mikel Arteta. Arteta he's clearly a better manager. He had an actual structure in place. Arsenal executed their game plan. Arsenal was the better team on the night. Arsenal deserved to win. A lot of people are going to say this Declan Rice free kicks, that how are you supposed to account for that? These things happen in football. But you have Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, Rodrigo, and you cannot score a goal. You have Skelly, no disrespect to him, but like Rodrigo against Skelly, you have to take advantage of those 1v1s. Rodrigo hardly saw the ball, sat in a deep block. You start with David Alaba going against Bukayo Saka, then you're already 1-0 down. Obviously, the goal comes from David Alaba fouling Saka and Declan Rice. Michael, let me hand it to you real quick. I kind of went on a monologue. Have you ever seen Declan Rice do that before? Like, where did that come from, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think Declan Rice, I said yesterday on the pod that, he really is one of the best midfielders in the world. And part of that is because he has all of the tools. He's a tremendous ball striker. There's been a call from me out all of this year to get him on free kicks. If Saka is not going to be taking them, then it should be Declan Rice, because this man is a tremendous striker of the ball from all situations, left foot, right foot. Can't quite say he's shown that free kick prowess quite yet for the Gunners, but he was saving it for a special night. And not only did it once, the first, I think, is a good free kick. Fede Valverde turns a little bit. If Fede Valverde stays straight up, does he maybe block it on the outside? Maybe. The second one's unstoppable, right? That is absolutely into the top corner. So just a tremendous ball striker who is saving it for the right day. But this is a player who can do it all in midfield. And I think that's part of the reason that Arteta has forced him to play higher and not really shoehorned him in as a six, because of what he showed tonight and his ability to drive forward with the ball and his ability to put it in the back of the net from distance.
Yeah, and right before we went live, I told you that this night felt very similar to the night we had against Manchester City at the Etihad. At some point, it felt like we had no way of escaping pressure. We had no way of getting it to our front three. Completely suffocated. Every time Vinicius did get those balls in transition, he was not really isolated 1v1 against Timber. You guys were able to recover that ground. There wasn't a lot of space between your midfield line and your back line. So again, like I said, Carlo Ancelotti tonight was outcoached. Mikel Arteta, like I said, one of the best managers in the world. And the thing is with Carlo Ancelotti is he's a good manager from the perspective of organizing your team. He's going to get your team set up in a good defensive block. But at the same time, he doesn't have a lot of strategy of how to get the ball to the attacking third. Like that build-up play and getting those the ball to his attacking players, putting them in zones where they can affect the game. And now you just look forward to the second leg. Do you see any chance for Real Madrid, even at I know it's the Bernabeu and everything, but the way you guys have been defending the season, and I have to look at what the XG looked like, but I imagine it's nowhere near one for Real Madrid. It's like, where are these chances going to come from at the Bernabeu?
Yeah, and I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday. My main concern was just getting in behind, right? Potentially taking advantage of Kiwior. And in the first half, there were those few chances getting in behind, right? Mbappe had, kind of his patented finish where he opens up and then comes near pipe, just didn't curl it all the way. At least I think that was his intention based on the body shape. But outside of that, there were chances were few and far between. We talked about yesterday that Arsenal very rarely get to play a side who plays them straight up. And I think we commanded a lot of the ball. Obviously, the kind of three center backs with Lewis Skelly coming into the midfield. I thought Miles was unbelievable today. I know that you felt that that was a matchup that Rodrigo could take advantage of. Miles Lewis Skelly right now is one of the best left backs in the world. I mean, this kid is
Really?
18. I think his future sits in the midfield. And I think you could tell based on the way that, he's able to turn on the ball. He's comfortable receiving it, with pressure kind of coming from all sides and able to make the right decision. And I think for someone who's really never played left back before this season, defensively, he sets himself really up really well. I think on the other side, Timber was unbelievable. We talked a little bit yesterday about how I felt that Timber would get really tight to Vinicius anytime he got the ball and not allow him to get ahead of speed. And I think he did that perfectly today, right? He kept his distances at the appropriate manner. And as a result, Vinny wasn't able to have as much of an impact on the game. Saliba obviously helping out, providing cover, whether it was Saka in the first half, Martinelli later on in the game, also providing that cover. And then, Thomas Partey and Declan Rice both had magnificent matches as well. So really a complete performance from Arsenal. I think a feather in the cap for Arteta is obviously his biggest win in his managerial career.
Yeah.
And clearly a sign that this team is amongst the best in the world, without question.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who watches the game questions that. Like as a person who watches football, I can see that Arsenal. I never underestimated Arsenal. A lot of people were saying Real Madrid. Like my tactical preview video, I said that Arsenal was going to win this first leg. I thought we were going to put together, a more formidable, sort of attack and maybe score a goal or two. I even thought if we scored one goal in this game, took it back to the Bernabeu with a 2-goal deficit, you still, the mystique of the Bernabeu, the pressure, it's sort of, but 3 goals down with the way that Arsenal defends and how bad we've been with transitions. And by the way, like in that first half, had Saliba not stopped that, that it was going in, like from
Yeah.
that corner. It was going to be 1-0 in that first half. We were much better in the first half. Kylian Mbappe had that chance. I heard Thierry Henry said it in the halftime that it was actually not necessarily that that he saves the chance, but it was more that Mbappe missed it. I don't really blame Kylian for that one because in my perspective, it's kind of when I look at the two teams, the amount of opportunities that Arsenal was having, it was only a matter of time before the floodgates sort of open and you guys were going to have more chances and score from open play. So again, to me, it's the fact that a lot of it's just a better organized and structured team. And the thing is, when you see Arsenal play, in comparison to Real Madrid, a lot of it is makeshift. We're constantly bringing players into the team. Fede has played as a 6 this season in the double pivot. He's played in a midfield 3. He's played at right back. He's played as a sole 6. He's played all these different positions. So there's not this sort of fluidity and comfort. Whereas with Arsenal, everybody kind of knows what they're doing. It felt very similar to our matchups against Manchester City, where there's a lot of dominance on the ball and also, just a complete control of the match. And then you guys took over at halftime. It was very competitive up to the half.
Without
But that's
question.
when Arsenal, and that's where, again, it points to the fact that Carlo Ancelotti didn't have ideas. And once you do go down a goal, you don't make those changes soon enough. Fede Valverde doesn't come into the midfield, and you lose so much by having him play at right back. But talk to me a little bit about Martinelli tonight as well, because I was surprised very early on in this game. Saka didn't surprise me, right? We tried to go 2v1 against Bukayo Saka, Jude Bellingham, to help David Alaba, because David Alaba cannot hang with him. He's just too much for David Alaba. He's too much for a lot of people. But at the same time, Martinelli was having some success too, which was really surprising to me. The fact that he was able to stand up Fede and really run at him, and he put a few balls into the box, and that to me was also very surprising, as his efficiency tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way Arsenal set up, as you discussed, everyone has defined roles, right? Partey's going to sit as the six. Declan Rice is going to be moving. Odegaard's going to come deeper to pick up the ball and make sure that it's flowing through the midfield. But our attacks really always start, I'd say, once we get the ball wide to either Saka or Martinelli. Somewhat of a different dribbling style in terms of how they look to beat their men. Martinelli really does like going to the line, right? So he's going to stand his man up, look to create half a yard, and when he's left 1v1, he definitely can cause significant problems for defenders. Um, and then he also has the ability to come back in on his right. So I think in the second half, Madrid started to double him a little bit more because he was starting to cause Fede significant problems as the game wore on. And on the other side, I mean, Saka is just quite clearly one of the top three left wingers in the world, obviously with Salah and Lamine Yamal. Rank them in any order that you want, but Saka is able to get on the ball and completely dictate the tempo of the game in the final third, right? Everyone kind of stops, the music stops, and they play to his rhythm. And even, just coming back from injury, he was able to show his truly world class quality, opposite of Martinelli. And, both our wingers put in fantastic shifts tonight.
Yeah. And to me, the prospect of having Xabi Alonso manage this team with a few reinforcements for next season is what I look forward to. If there's any silver lining, if you ask any Real Madrid fans about this defeat tonight, like we never like to lose in the Champions League. We never like to get knocked out in the Champions League. But the silver lining is we know if we lost this game 1-0, narrow win, we scrape through in the end, we lose to Arsenal in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Let's say we somehow win the Copa del Rey. Perez will sit back and say, well, Carlo Ancelotti another season. Let's ride it out with my guy. He doesn't make a lot of noise in the media. I tell him play Lucas Vasquez at right back. He doesn't complain. You know what I mean? He doesn't this guy doesn't give me a headache. And that's why Carlo Ancelotti has been able to successfully stay at Real Madrid this long, is because he knows how to navigate the politics, and he knows how to keep stars happy. And that's like, I'm not trying to discount one of the greatest managers of all time. Like, I'm not trying to say Carlo Ancelotti is one of the worst managers, but at the same time, it's run its course. A lot of his ideas in the long run, especially for a lot of these players who need a little bit more structure around them, players like Kamavinga, players like Jude, Chouameni, you're seeing a little bit of regression in some of these guys as well, because they don't have the structure and the system around them that helps them thrive. Just watching a little bit of like Arteta, the way he's managed Arsenal, and sort of helping these players understand their roles and responsibilities, helping foster, like Bukayo Saka, when he first broke into the scene. Arteta was the manager at that time. He was 17, just coming in through the academy, but he's the one who turned him into this star, right? Like, and so he should be accredited for this. Like Martin Odegaard, Real Madrid player, comes into Arsenal, at the time wasn't doing necessarily that well, wasn't regarded as highly as he is today. Think about where Odegaard was when he joined Arsenal versus where he is today. Now, I'm not saying that Carlo Ancelotti hasn't turned some of these Real Madrid players into stars, but it's very obvious to me that there is a significant lack of structure in this team. And do you? I know you hold Carlo to high esteem. Do you disagree with
I
one?
certainly do. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest managers of all time in terms of the Champions League victories, the amount of teams, around the world. Also, a former great player himself. But no, I completely agree. I mean, I think this game's won and lost in the midfield. I think Madrid needs midfield reinforcements, which you and I have talked about ad nauseum this year, just in terms of a player who can get on the ball and control. Luka, one of the greatest of all times, but at 39, trying to compete in the midfield with Odegaard, Rice, and Partey,
Yeah.
it's difficult. I actually thought Camavinga was really strong throughout the game. Obviously, gets sent off at the end, but just his ability to get stuck in. But that's something he's always had, right? And I think the next step for Camavinga is his on the ball ability and being able to progress it. He obviously hits I think, probably one of the finest diagonals in the world, but you don't see the build up play and the combination play. And I think that's probably the next step for him. And for
Yeah,
me, really, this game is won and lost in the midfield completely. And we just
for sure.
completely outclassed Madrid. And then just for Madrid trying to shoehorn Rodrigo, Vinny, Mbappe, and Jude, right? You're leaving a lot of pressure on the back six against a much more of a team in Arsenal with defined roles, with defined expectations. Everyone knows the movements of the other players. I think you saw Arsenal keep the ball in tight spaces, really all over the pitch, and that's all just through the chemistry that they've built together, and also the really passing patterns that are well drilled into this team that I think were on display because there wasn't a low block or a mid block kind of throughout this game. Madrid did try to play them straight up and, kind of was had to deal with the outcome that this was a much better side tactically today. And certainly, like I said, a feather in the cap for Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tale of two halves, right? Like it, both teams looked completely differently from the first half to the second half. But you guys just seemed to turn it on in the second half.
Mhm.
And Real Madrid didn't have that extra gear. No supply to the front three. No way of getting the ball to those attacking players. Sitting back very deep, but also not having necessarily the personnel to do it. Um, when you look man for man, Arsenal versus Real Madrid, a few of those Arsenal players are starting for Real Madrid.
Absolutely.
Declan Rice, without a question, walks into that Real Madrid team and starts and makes us better. Um,
Saka, I would say the same thing. I mean, Saliba, the performance he put on, we haven't talked about Kiwior at all, but stepping into a match where he was never expected to play a week ago
well,
and putting on a
to
very strong
me,
performance.
we also made a lot of these guys look good. To be fair, like Kivior, Skelly on the ball, yes, good player, but like we made these guys look like stars tonight. It
Yeah.
was a truly like Real Madrid is known, will lose in La Liga to a team that hasn't beat us. Valencia hasn't beaten us in 17 years. They come to the Bernabeu. They had three players that they on purpose made sure were suspended when they faced us at the Bernabeu because they're like, there's no point. They're coming to the Bernabeu. They're not going to win. They made sure these three guys were not available for that match. And then they come into the Bernabeu and they get their first win in 15 years. Like they did not believe that they were gonna. It was their first win away from home in La Liga. Their first win away from home in La Liga was at the Bernabeu. Absolutely shambolic. Like from the beginning, Carlo Ancelotti has been talking about this need to stay compact, right? But we've seen this so much this season, which is even when the team has sort of been organized and they've done it for 60 or 70 minutes, it's always that last 15, 20 minutes of the game where it always seems to fall apart for us. The first half, we looked a little bit more organized, more compact. But as the game wears on, there's just so much space that opens up, right? And it's also partly to do, I mean, obviously not all down to Luka Modric. You have these two incredible free kicks, which when do you see free kicks like that? Like that was absurd. Like he hit one of them around our entire wall, and then the second one he hits it to the other spot. Both of them go top corner, beating Thibaut Courtois, who's the best keeper
Who,
in the
who
world.
who was sensational and saved it from being potentially 5-0. I mean, a couple of the saves off the line, a couple of the chances in the second half. You
Yeah,
can maybe say that the free kicks are maybe lucky, but I think Arsenal are a very good value for a 3-0 win in that game, especially in the second half.
we did not deserve to come away with anything in this game. Like
Mhm.
the team that deserved to win won. And like I said, Carlo Ancelotti in this game was simply outmatched by Mikel Arteta, and I mean, the big thing for Real Madrid fans, a lot of the people here in the chat would agree with me is when you see this team week in, week out, and we see the process of how poor Real Madrid is in La Liga, you can't just switch it on, right? Like Real Madrid has been known to do that. We look very bad in the league where we suffer losses, and people are like, oh, as soon as that Champions League music comes on, they're going to switch on and they're going to win. Sometimes in life it doesn't work like that, right? Like you need that consistency you need to work in the training ground every single day on some of these things so that you can actually put forth a solid performance when the lights really turn on. But to me, it's like these are some of the best players in the world. You're talking about Rudiger, Camavinga, who, all the top teams in Europe want to recruit him. Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Arsenal, all these teams want to get Camavinga because of how good he is. But this season, you're seeing the regression even of Camavinga. He has not had necessarily his best season. To me, a lot of these players are losing confidence because of how poorly they're performing. And we've seen this dip also by Manchester City, right? Like Manchester City, where they are this season versus last season, huge, drastic drop. But at this point, I think it's more about making sure that we don't lose by even bigger margin at the Bernabeu at this point. To me, it's not even about like us beating Arsenal at the Bernabeu. It's not going to happen. We're not winning against Arsenal at this point. To me, all we need to do in the second leg is minimize the damage. Like, don't lose by a big margin. Don't embarrass yourselves. Don't let it be a 6-0, 7-0 aggregate score. But the positive to me is Xabi Alonso. I'm going to start becoming a realtor. I'm going to send Xabi Alonso all the best properties in Spain. I'm going to research where the best locations are, where Xabi Alonso might be happy. Obviously, he lived in Madrid. I don't know if he can move into his old home in Madrid. Obviously, he was with us for La Decima. But this team, with a few additions this summer, we're linked with a few players that are going to obviously come into the midfield, make a big impact with the fullback situation. You cannot put all your eggs in the basket of Ferland Mendy. You need some reinforcements. Obviously, Trent is coming. Trent is healthy today. Is he stopping Martinelli? Absolutely not. We need Carvajal to be fit. So again, it also comes down to the board giving Xabi Alonso, when he arrives, the players he needs to be successful. Historically, the biggest problem we've had at Real Madrid, unlike Arsenal, Arteta will go to the board and say, hey, unless it's a situation like with Mudryk. With Mudryk, you guys wanted to sign him, and then Chelsea comes in and offers him quadruple with their oil money, right, at the time. Whereas with us, the board goes to the manager and says, hey, this is what you got. You either work with it or you don't. So I just hope they give Xabi Alonso the backing that he needs to be successful.
And I think Arteta's faced some of the same things. I mean, there's been a lot of Kroenke out screams over the last couple of years. They've tempered down as the team has improved, but I mean, a lot of that's down to Mikel Arteta. Obviously, we made the big money signings, and Declan Rice is a $100 million signing, and oh my goodness, was he worth it today? But there have been other times where we've gone after bigger names and we've had to settle. I mean, again, the team today, no recognized striker. Marino obviously scores a beauty for the third, but there's no 9 there. I think similar for Madrid, you can't not mention the injury absences, and no Militao, obviously massive. Tchouaméni, I think, would have at least made the midfield battle somewhat more competitive in terms of being able to match up with Declan Rice and with Martin Odegaard. So injuries obviously play a big role in it as well, for both teams. But I believe that you're absolutely right that Madrid need reinforcements. I think they give Xabi Alonso the keys because he's still in a good place in Leverkusen at the moment. And for him to decide that this is the right time to come to Madrid, it's going to have to come with that bankroll. I know we've talked about, potentially the double dip at Leverkusen between Xabi Alonso and Florian Wirtz coming. I think obviously that helps, but we've also talked about there needs to be some deeper, true 6s and 8s to support that front four. Jude and Mbappe and Vinny and Rodrigo, or else we're going to see more of what we saw today.
100%. And to me, it's when the second leg, Tchouaméni and Ceballos are likely to start together. Not that, we're going to win the second leg, but had both of them been fit today, we're looking at a much different, more balanced midfield. You have Danny Ceballos who averages over 100 passes per game. And it's not just about the fact that he is averaging over 100 passes. It's the fact that whenever Ceballos is on the pitch, a lot of his teammates are looking for him. He's receiving the ball. He's playing line-breaking passes forward. And he just simply makes the team more balanced. Tchouaméni is also really good in terms of screening. He provides a lot more of that stable ball progression. Camavinga is a little bit more adventurous in his passing and his line breaking through ball carrying. But to me, it's more depth in the squad, a more reliable. We've been linked with Zubamendi. I don't know what that's going to look like, whether it's Zubamendi or somebody else. Apparently, Xabi Alonso has told different people at Real Madrid, hey, if I'm coming, I want Zubamendi. Make sure he doesn't sign for Arsenal. Arteta has been really keen on getting Zubamendi at Arsenal. So it seems like that's a guy that we're looking at. But everything that I've seen from Zubamendi, like his profile seems more similar to Dani Ceballos. He's a player that averages a lot of passes per game, a lot of control, a lot of touches on the ball, but not necessarily very physical. Like he's not very good in headers, or his physicality and tackles won is not necessarily up there, very high up in comparison to a lot of other midfielders in Europe. So the question is, and also, by the way, Zubamendi's long range passing, I think I saw a stat, it was something like 54%. He completes about 54% of long range passes attempted. So again, you're never going to find a like for like replacement for a guy like Toni Kroos. That's a guy who's coming in, he was averaging 95% pass completion. Talk about evading pressure. Talk about being, put against, a hostile environment. One of the best Toni Kroos performances last season was at the Etihad. When they were pressing us like dogs, and, that was a much more competitive game. He was just finding, those passes, both short and long line breaking passes, completely cool, ice in his veins, controlling the game. And that's what we really lost. And they didn't replace Toni Kroos this summer. Real Madrid's philosophy is, if we can't get the guy we really want, we'd rather get nobody. But yeah, I mean, I guess looking forward, I mean, you must like your chances against PSG, right? Like, or you're not ready to
Well,
replace them?
I'm not ready to go there yet. We still have to go to one of the cathedrals of football where, those historic comebacks are a dime a dozen, right? So I think the other thing to keep an eye on is the injury trouble for Arsenal. We saw Saka limp off as he won the free kick for Declan Rice's second goal. Looks like he sustained some damage to his ankle. Declan Rice hobbles off. Urine Timber potentially comes up. And he's always a going concern just due to his past ACL tear and all the minutes he's had to play this year. So obviously, if those players are fit, I'm confident that we'll be able to come away with an appropriate result to be able to advance. But I'm certainly not looking past next Wednesday. I've seen Kylian Mbappe turn a World Cup final around on his own in 7 or 8 minutes when it seemed like it was all done and dusted. So I'm certainly not writing Real Madrid off at this point. And I think they'll obviously be motivated to put on a much better performance. And it'll be interesting to see how Mikel Arteta sets up his team in the face of a 3-0 scoreline in Madrid.
Yeah, no, it's I'm telling you, the way Arsenal's been defending, and even if we score multiple goals, there's no way we're not conceding multiple goals with the way we've been defending. We've been just god awful. Camavinga is suspended for that second leg, by the way, which means he would have been an option at left back with Tchouaméni coming into the midfield. That's no longer possible. Like you said, if Saka is out for that second leg, who knows? That's a huge loss for Arsenal. But again, I don't personally feel like we are going to do anything in that second leg. Like, to me, it's more of, okay, at least we lost by a big margin, and now we can bring Xabi Alonso in the summer and properly rebuild the squad, which badly needs to be rebuilt. This is a team, that has, we have not had any like substantial overhaul of the squad. Players like Lucas Vasquez, thank you for your service. Fran Garcia, again, thank you for your service. No longer needed. Luka Modric, come on, man, like Real Madrid legend, but shouldn't get another contract extension. Also, protect your legacy, Luka. Like, everything that you've accomplished in the game, give some way for these younger guys also to get some more experience and minutes. So a couple of reinforcements really needed. And by the way, Real Madrid, consider maybe even getting a center forward striker, or at least that profile player, because we need that kind of player, especially for games where we need to evade pressure. When you're either playing it at the Emirates or Etihad and you're under a high press like that, sometimes having like a physical presence at number 9 is how you find a target man, you play off of him. But we have the 3 best wingers of the world playing at the same team, just in different positions, so it just looks very, there's a lack of balance, clearly.
Without
Um,
without question, and I think even Mbappe's still been sensational this year. I think 33 goals, which ties Cristiano's debut season in Madrid. But I still hold the fact that he always looks best with a pure number 9 ahead of him. So even for France, whether it's been
yeah,
Giroud or it's been Marcus Thuram in the second half of the World Cup final, that's when I think he'll raise his level even a little bit higher. But no, certainly overhaul needed at Madrid. I'd focus similar to what you said on the midfield. Looks like right back has been settled with Trent. Um, and then you slide in. Hopefully, Militao is able to stay healthy once he comes back. Rudiger at center back. We're still talking about one of the most talented teams on the face of the planet, without question.
yeah. And you know what? Sometimes in football, you lose games by moments like these free kicks, that like a guy who's never scored a top bins free kick like this scores 2 in one game. Like, that's incredible. Like, I I don't know what to say to that. Like, so,
Yeah.
sometimes you can plan all you want, but these things happen. But again, regardless of that, throughout this entire season, what we've seen enough from Carlo Ancelotti to know that it's just not been good enough for Real Madrid. Uh, you know, I'll wrap it here. Just kind of what your final thoughts are on, from your perspective, because I'm a Real Madrid fan. I'm, deal with this day to day. What do you think about the project at Real Madrid? What do you think about your chances of, winning it? Frankly, like, you don't think you can pull it off?
I think Arsenal, if we get through, and I again will not rest until we get past the Bernabeu on Wednesday. But if we can go on, it looks like likely we'd be facing either Aston Villa or PSG, and likely PSG based on their current form. As mentioned in the pod yesterday, we did play PSG earlier in the season with a resounding 2-0 victory at home at the Emirates. But if you look at the underlying statistics, it was more of a kind of a dominance from Arsenal in the first half, and then PSG applied pressure kind of throughout the rest of the game. I think they had 65% of the ball, and more shots on target and more shots overall. So PSG, when you get to the semifinal of the European Championship, you're obviously going to be playing amongst the best teams in the world. You see the likes of Desiree Doué, you see the likes of Bradley Barcola, Kavichi Kvaratskhelia, the midfield of Vitinha and João Neves and Fabian Ruiz and Warren
They're a
Zaire
solid
Emery.
team.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a tremendous team.
yeah,
Dembele playing as that center forward, but then also having Gonzalo Ramos as more of kind of a pure 9 profile. So of course, if we continue to play in this fashion and players can stay healthy, I like our chances. I think all eggs will be in the Champions League basket going forward. I think 11 points back in the league of Liverpool. We dust our hands, make sure that we maintain the top 4 position and qualify again for the Champions League next year. Um, but all eyes will be focused on the Champions League going forward here in North London.
Well, I'll just my closing remarks, I'll say, is, you know, to me, there was a moment when David Alaba, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, but David Alaba gives up that free kick, the one that Declan Rice scores, and then the camera pans to Roberto Carlos. Roberto Carlos, like, I've been watching football for, since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, Roberto Carlos was our starting left back. And I used to watch, he was one of my favorite players growing up. I loved Roberto Carlos. But I remember when he stayed too long, and there was that game against Lyon where he got done up, and we ended up getting knocked out. And we went through this phase where we would lose to Lyon like every single year. And there was it was off a kickoff and they scored. And that was Roberto Carlos's last Champions League game for Real Madrid. But it had to come to that, right? Like, the club always lets things come to that where it falls apart before they say, okay, fine. We even though the writing was on the wall, we had to see it with our own 2 eyes to see that you no longer have it. And that's the case here. It's the same thing with Luka Modric. You know, one of Luka's worst games was that 4-0 drubbing that we had at the Etihad, you know, 2 seasons back, when, you know, 2 seasons back when they ended up winning the Champions League.
Mhm.
Luka Modric was just, he looked like an old guy. He was 38 years old during that game. That we started with Cruz at the 6, Modric and Fede. Like that was our midfield three, and he absolutely got done up. Tonight looked very similar. He looked like an older statesman. He didn't look like he could keep up physically with some of these guys. Compare him to the likes of Declan Rice and some of these other guys you guys have, some of your players. He just doesn't have the physicality to keep up with these guys, and it's like you you cannot give a guy like this a contract extension. You need to move away from Carlo Ancelotti. You need to rebuild the squad. This summer needs to be an overhaul at Real Madrid, but it needs to be these kinds of games where you get thrashed, so that you hear that message. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you all for jumping on here. You can't win them all. And if we do end up losing, which I think we will, my good friend Michael here, wants to wait and see what happens at the Bernabeu. I think they're through.
Seen it too many times, my friend. I've seen it too many times.
To me, I hope if you guys, when you guys get the job done, I'll say that. Just please, for God, please, like, beat Barcelona. Do not let them win the Champions League. Please, like, anything except for Barcelona. I was talking to my friend yesterday about going to Munich to catch the game because he's a huge Barca fan. Now I know I'm not going to Munich, but you might want to check out some of those tickets and flights. And yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll be in London at the end of the month. So the hope is that if we do make it through, potentially being able to catch a semifinal either in London or Paris. So we'll keep our fingers crossed over here.
All right, my friend. Well, you're a very humble guy, Michael. Jumping on here, I know you've not wanted to brag or anything. This is a Real Madrid channel. I appreciate you, but you're a gentleman. Congrats on the win. We can't win them all, but the better team won tonight. So congrats to you, my friend, and
Thank
thank
you,
you so
brother.
much
It's a
for
pleasure.
joining me.
No, it's a pleasure, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks.